Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Save Point Stories, the show where I talk about our relationships with video games and have guests on to share their experiences and stories about how games have left an impression on their lives. This season, we've been doing all these different amazing guests in our show, and that doesn't stop here. I have another amazing guest that I would love to introduce you guys to today. He is one of the most amazing hosts and creators, and he's one of the hosts and creators of the show The Welcome Party. He's the owner of the wildly successful Intermyth, constantly engaging with brand support and guidance, myself included. He moderates and is a panelist at countless internationally renowned conventions such as WonderCon and Comic-Con. TRPG extraordinaire on numerous stories and series. A close friend. JPG, thank you for joining me today.
I should just have you introduce me all the time for things,
I would,
right?
You give me the word and where and when. I'll do it at a dinner. I'll do it at a convention. I'll do it anywhere.
Where were you for my wedding? Like, what happened?
You guys can renew your vows. Let me know when that's happening.
You know, that actually, funny story, that's actually next year. That's next year.
Okay, so we'll be talking.
And I don't know if Alex's episode comes out before my episode. Do you know about this?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've been catching up with Save Point Stories, Alex Catherine is my wonderful, beautiful wife. This will be 17 years together this year, and the next year will be 18 years together and our 10-year wedding anniversary.
Oh my God, I'm so happy for you guys. I was so lucky and so happy to fortunate to say that I got to have both of you be on this season of the show. And the stuff you guys keep doing and always are involved in and stuff I just love so much. You guys are just such great people.
Thank you so much.
Everyone should get to know you guys better. But in that vein, let's get into today's episode and today's topic. JPG, what game did you bring today, and that means the world to you?
This is a little bit cheating because I actually brought two games to you today. So
I made a special exception for you.
I brought Pokemon Red and Blue version.
Pokemon Red and Blue. So let's, for the uninitiated or for those that it's been a few years, well, I'm going to give a brief overview of the game. Pokemon Red version and Blue version are 1996 role-playing video games, RPGs, developed by Game Freak and published by Nintendo for the Game Boy. They are the first installments in the Pokemon video game series and were first released in Japan as Pocket Monsters Red and Pocket Monsters Green, followed by the special edition Pocket Monsters Blue later that year. The player controls the protagonist from an overhead perspective, navigating the fictional region of Kanto in a quest to master Pokemon battling and catch them all. The goal is to become a champion of the Indigo League by defeating the 8 gym leaders and the top Pokemon trainers in the land, the Elite Four. Other objectives include completing the Pokedex, obtaining all 151 Pokemon, using Game Link cables across the two versions to trade and to battle with friends. So, without further ado, JPG, why does this game mean so much to you?
This game to me, and to add a little bit of an amendment to your introduction to this as well, too.
Please, yeah.
You had actually listed 1996 as the release date for this, and that is true for Japan. Now, I'm based in Southern California, like Kurosha's as well, and this game actually came out in late September of 1998. For us. So just almost about 2 years after the initial Japanese release. And for me, I brought this game because this was such a huge part of my formative years in order to really get to explore the type of person that I wanted to be and the type of person that I wanted to work towards. And I know that's saying a lot, especially because I think this came out when I was in... Good Lord, I think the 5th or 6th grade. So yeah.
You were making hard choices back then. You're like, this is the road I want to go
on. we joke about this sort of stuff as well too, and of course the point of Save Point Stories is to talk a little bit more about our backgrounds and to make sure that we are diving into it. We joke about it, but no, I was making very hard choices at the time.
I believe you. Yeah.
This game was an absolute lifesaver. I come from a single mother household who I remember this being the very first gift that I can honestly say I understood how much work it took for my mom to get for me.
Wow.
And yeah, so this was coming out. So my birthday was December of that year.
Yeah.
And I remember being so obsessed with the show and how everybody else was obsessed with it as well. And my mom very much picked up and understood that. And I remember her working extra hours in order to save up for a Game Boy Pocket Blue, and because it was cheaper than the Game Boy Color at the time,
Yeah.
and newer than the original Game Boy, so it was kind of that perfect middle. And then she bought me Pokemon Blue version first, because she didn't, of course, she didn't know better, so she was like trying to match the cartridge with the Game Boy and all that as well. She eventually bought me Red also, but I just remember. I remember staying up, waiting for her to come home from work at midnight, and remembering, oh yeah, she told me she's working 2 hours later today, or 3 hours later today, or 4 hours later today. And then I remember opening that up. And I even remember, because she felt so awful that she couldn't buy me the Game Boy Color, but I begged for a pocket so my mom didn't have to work harder.
Wow. So for that, I was going to ask you about that. So you were aware that the extra hours being put in was for, like, she was trying to work, like that was something that she was like working with you for?
Well, single mom, right? So like, she made the time to make us breakfast and drop us off at school. She made time to pick us up, and then once she picked us up, we were kind of latchkey kids, right? Like, my older brother and I were, and then we had another family member who was my godparents' son. And he went to school near us, so he would walk to our house while my mom would pick up my brother and I, and we'd all be at our place, just the three of us alone, no supervision, until his parents picked them up, and then my mom came home around midnight. And so I, it's very much I like to joke with my mom now that my mom worked school hours time, in the sense where she made sure we were at school, and that was just about it.
Yeah. But you mentioned like you were, she was working for that, and then you got to that point. Was that something in your history too, of like you were watching it and stuff, so you had already been introduced a little bit to Pokemon prior to the game launch then?
Oh yeah, I mean, with the anime kind of coinciding with the popularity of the game as well too, and I think especially with the almost 2 years that it had in Japan, they had a very unique position to launch for a Western market in a way that was probably like some of the most effective game launches that we've seen in the last 30-40 years.
Oh yeah. You look back at that as like a pivotal moment in the history of the industry. In a lot of ways.
And so and with the synergy, and I hate talking about this too, because I knew that this was going to get to marketing and branding in a little bit as well.
You can't escape it.
Yeah, I cannot escape it. With a lot of Intermyth being about like content creation, brand marketing, and management and all that as well, I have to talk about the branding and the marketing, because we saw in real time, this is a show that's going to be a hit with kids. This game is going to be releasing with it as well. This is the merchandise that has already worked, and we're already working on even more things to get you excited.
Yeah.
And also seeing that cross promotion between, and this is something that's very, I would say, very unique to Pokemon and to just really like brands at the time, where the cartoon, the anime, was releasing tidbits about the next game.
Yeah.
Like you'd see Pokemon on the show that aren't available in the game that you're playing.
Right.
And then you realize, oh my gosh, a year later, this game came out with all of these new features.
I felt like that was, if I look back now and make connect the dots, I had a growing appreciation for international like scope of things more so than I ever realized, of just like, oh, it isn't just America. It's now there's an audience for the gaming industry across the ocean, and it's impacting us here, and it's doing all these things that now I'm more in tune with because of the passion I had as well for this franchise of like, what's going on? What's happening next?
Did you start with red or blue?
I was a fan. Like my story, I don't. For me, I grew up with. I wanted a Nintendo 64. All my friends and neighbors had that, and eventually, like a few years after it had come out, I got it. But I remember one year, I just wanted a game. I was like, oh, we rent games all the time. I wanted just one game, and my dad on like I don't know where it came from, but it has been ingrained in my memory as like a pivotal moment of he just was like, would you want the game when I could get you the Game Boy and a game with it? That makes more sense. I'm like, I didn't know that was on the table. Like I didn't like where did this kindness come from? You're encouraging and like he would occasionally just do little things. I think not directly trying to be kind and like trying to be like I'm gonna do a little bit extra because he worked his ass off and made a lot of sacrifices in his years. But I will never forget that moment where he like just was like, yeah, pick the what game you want to go, like pick a game to go with your Game Boy. And I was like, I have to make a choice. I went with Pokemon Blue as well.
Ah,
I for some reason I thought with the sweater you have on, I was like, oh, he picked red, didn't he? He's a fan of the dragon.
it was funny. I just changed out of a blue sweater as well, too.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And you said being a fan of Charizard. I actually have a tradition in the games that I've stuck to since Gen 1. And I think we're in Gen 9 now at this point, right?
Yeah, we're in Gen 9.
In every Pokemon game, I always choose the grass starter for my very first playthrough.
Why the grass starter?
So I remember talking at school with the other kids.
Okay.
And I remember, I'm going to pick the cool fire lizard or I'm going to pick the cool turtle. And there was nobody at school picking the plant puppy, right? And so I think, out of the three of them, Bulbasaur as a choice was just not popular because of the design wasn't automatic, right? We also just we didn't have the benefit of seeing what Pokemon Green looked like in the US as well, right? This is not pre-internet, but this is like new internet, right? Where your parents couldn't pick up the phone while you were trying to search for Pokemon facts, right? And with Red and Blue, you had the distinct ability to see Charizard and Blastoise on box,
right?
And to see another Pokemon kind of just be cast aside like that, it kind of drew me to it, and I've picked the grass starter every first playthrough that I've ever done with every game.
I see so much of your roots now going back to Pokemon. Your attention to branding, your care and your love, your support for underrepresented. It's like everything is there.
Oh yeah, it's all there. It's all there.
It all started there. Well, so you mentioned like the schoolyard too. Like, was this a game you bonded over with your friends and kids your age?
I would say that this was a game that I would personally say made me a little bit more popular on the playground, specifically because I was the only kid in my class who had blue version.
Okay.
And so, of course, you're in that era where you're sneaking your Game Boy to school, right?
Recess.
And, you're trying to hide a link cable in your bag, And so I was able, there was a big market for me to catch the exclusive Pokemon in blue, keep them in Bill's PC, and then trade them over to kids whenever I could, right? And that made me. It gave me a lot of social currency.
Yeah. No, it was interesting in the way that those games more like than any others at that time really encouraged a level of like, hey, there is a social contract here with other players. You're not just engaging with the game itself anymore. You're engaging with the game and trying to work together to get there. Like, that was a big part of it. So I think that is interesting to see. Like, was there trading was a big thing, but how was I'm also curious, did you guys do any kind of the combat side of things?
The combat, I think, was something that I very much gravitated towards.
Oh, really? Okay.
It was, and of course, right? Like I'm 11 or 12 years old, right? So it's everything is just attack moves
Yeah.
at this point, right? And I was trying to look at I was trying to look at the game from an objective point of view, because this is a time where I'm almost hitting puberty as well too, where I'm like, okay, they wouldn't have this in the game to just be useless. So why do they have these types of moves that just don't do damage, right?
Right.
And as a very lonely child, like this is when experiment and hypothesis comes in, where I'd load up a Pokemon with the moves that I wanted to test out and see what it practically does to wild Pokemon, to trainers, and all that stuff as well, right?
Wow.
And this is also where I learned save scumming,
Oh, okay.
right? Because you'd save right before a trainer.
Uh-huh.
And then you go into the battle and you test a few things, right?
Right.
And then you turn it off, turn it right back on. You're about to fight that trainer again. Now you try different moves. What is being affected at this point, right? And even like the syntax and the word choice of the moves, right? Where it's like, oh, like it's not very effective. It's super effective. Their defense decreased. Their defense. There's an adjective that they use, like sharply decreased, or sharply increased as well, right? Okay, well, now looking at those words a little bit closer, okay, what does this actually do?
How did you feel? I know you're always very invested in the conversations we've had about other games, in what the stories of these games, in the world that it builds, and that the anime, and then this world that this now has. How did that translate to you for the game at that time? Like Bill's PC, and learning that who Bill was, and your rival, and the journey of the protagonist and everything. Like,
I think with that question, I would take a step back, right? And I would want to talk about just the need for adventure in general at the age that it caught me at.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because this is very much, and I think we've seen this phenomena with so many pieces of pop culture media, right? The oh gosh, the example that I always like to use is Harry Potter, right? A lot of Harry Potter fans now were 10 years old when that first book came out, right? And when do you start at Hogwarts? You start at 10 years old, right? For this one, right, I was like maybe a year or two older than the protagonist. Right? At 10 years old, they're just like, here's a monster who could light stuff on fire. Now have an adventure.
Yeah.
Right? And it's this idea that, like adults and children alike just see you out in the daylight and they're like, oh yeah, he's just on an adventure. Right? And yeah, you have that goal of like, oh, I need to beat gym leaders and get stronger and find new friends. Whether they're Pokemon or NPCs or anything like that, right? But then there's also like those other stories too, right? Like, who the heck is Team Rocket, right? Why is the Elite Four such a big deal? Like, why is this one ghost in Lavender Town just constantly bothering me, right? And it's that sense of adventure that I think a lot of kids gravitated towards in a time where, and I'm sure you experienced this as well, at a time where we were old enough to cross the street and our parents weren't letting us.
Yeah. There's a lot of safety precaution and all kinds of. For me, though, the interesting thing was, I had I don't know if it was the same experience, but there was a dynamic to how it blended within the schoolyard and with the social spaces. I grew up in a small town in a space where there weren't very many people like myself, culturally and in other ways. And so it kind of like, this game hit for me as an escape in a lot of ways, of I'm also seeing this protagonist going into a world where he's a little bit, he's amongst others, but he's different. He's unique, and he's trying to strive to survive in that and to find his place in that, or her place, however the character you chose to have. But that for me was a way to be like, there, like I can live through this in some ways. And I think to your point of that, the Potter thing too, of like, how can I find my thing to resonate with and either relate to or escape into in some ways, was my kind of experience there.
I think a very big point of being a child is to understand and to cherish your uniqueness, right? Because I think you find out at a very young age that you are just different than everyone else. Sometimes you look different, most of the time you feel different, you're just different. And when games like this, especially during formative years, get to focus on your uniqueness and show it as a strength, I think that's why it resonates, right? And I think that's why it's resonated for almost 20 years now for me.
Yeah. The other aspect of it that I think resonates and it leads me to my next question is, I think it was something powerful for me of not just it's you as a single character, but it was for me, it was my first time having a game where it was like, it's a team. It's you and your team. And I really drew a lot of value and took a lot of emphasis on having my own squad, that like we're a tight knit group. How much did how did you approach who was in your team and how did you view that? Was that any interesting aspects there for you?
I really loved so on our computer, on a family member's computer, because we didn't have a computer at home at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I had taught myself chess.
Okay.
And it was this idea that, okay, when I'm at this family member's home and I can play on this computer, I can play against the computer and it is something that is interacting with me. My mom got a chess set for us, right? And I remember being at home, setting up the chess set and quickly realizing that I don't have somebody else to play against. And for me, jumping into this, right, I have, I am gifted this unique Pokemon at the very beginning, and then I can choose, how the makeup of my team as well, too. And getting to play against trainers, getting to play against wild Pokemon as well, this was a great substitute for chess, right? Because not only was there a combat aspect, right? There is a give and take aspect of this. There was typing as well too, and typing could make or break a match for you at this point. And so at a time where I was starting to love the idea of strategy, it gave me strategy in a kid-sized package, right?
So you mentioned typing and you mentioned a few of the different aspects of like what drew you into that. I'm also curious. I resonated strongly with like each town had its own personality. Each town had its own gym leaders, and not all towns had gym leaders, but the towns that did, that was very much the personality and energy of that town. Did any of the regions in Kanto really resonate with you the most? And I'm curious why.
Oh gosh, I have to look this up now. Okay, I'm gonna pick Celadon City.
Celadon, okay.
For two reasons. Celadon had the slot machine, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, Celadon had the slot machine, which is awful, right? Because I'm like, oh wait, am I a gambler? I think I'm a gambler, right? And so there was that aspect that really, in hindsight, is really inappropriate and terrible that we put into that game, and now we're teaching kids about slots. But I digress. I'm happy that I went through the experience myself. There was something else in Celadon that really reaches out to me.
Okay.
There's a building north of in Celadon City where you can actually enter from the back instead of the front. Uh-huh. And as somebody who is very much a leave no stone unturned in a new area sort of player, I was just searching around the city, and this is one of the first times that we can see, we can enter from the back of this building. And from the back of this building, you go up a few flights, I believe, or something like that, and there's a Pokeball that looks, like how you chose Charmander, Bulbasaur, or Squirtle at the very beginning. You choose it, and it's the only Eevee that you can get in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember then, like playing it for a few more days, friends ask to battle, and I pull out a Jolteon. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, it's a Jolteon. It comes from an Eevee. And they're like, where did you find an Eevee? And I'm like, oh. And this was somewhere, this is one of those moments where, that Easter egg that I guess like that shared community and that shared knowledge and community as well too. And like, oh yeah, a strategy guide would have told you that or something like that, which, RIP strategy guides. But but to be able to have that shared knowledge in between players in real time, and you get to direct them towards finding an Easter egg or a thing that they just glossed over.
Yeah,
they just glossed over. It was amazing.
It's something I think we don't. Generations today won't even realize that social dynamic having differed, because back nowadays, if you're looking for even the remotest thing to be available or to figure out how, there are more than a multitude of there's occupations dedicated to providing those guides and outline every nook and cranny. But in our time with this game, I recognize that too, of like the sense of discovery, the communal, oh, I heard if you do this, if you do that. There were even like beyond that Easter egg, there was more of like, you remember Missing No, and the item glitches and stuff of like, wait, what? Like this isn't even a part of the strategy guys that if someone got a hold of, there was another layer of secrecy and again, it encouraged that like, what is the communal kind of like understanding of things,
and then there's that third layer where it's all of the rumors and the things that we made up in order to feel as if you're in the know, right? Like, oh yeah, well, like you can find Mew if you sail at the SSN and there's a random truck, right? Or like, oh, well, like this is how you catch Peekaboo and like things like that, right?
Yeah,
like,
put item on the 6th slot, do this, do that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what? Okay, I'll try.
And like, and Missing No, the Missing No glitch was like very much a glitch that was proven to work for just about everyone, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to those other things like the Mew and the Peekaboo stuff. These are urban legends that like, oh, my uncle works at Nintendo and and all that, right? And so you find that more and more on the internet now, and yes, it is easier to debunk, but it also, when you hear them on the internet now, they're just not as fun.
There's occasionally, once in a blue moon, you'll hear someone that spent 8 years on a game having just discovered something, and that still like refreshes me a little bit of like, oh, okay, the times of old of like how is a sense of discovery and fun. But yeah, I don't think they're as clever, and it kind of maybe goes into the way the industry is as a whole, of like how much energy do they want their developers nowadays to be putting into things that could or would never maybe see the light of day by a player. Like,
well, it's especially
yeah,
like with easy access to both the internet and social media, there are no game secrets anymore. Once in a while you hear this thing of like, oh, like it took somebody 10 years in order to find this particular Easter egg, which is fun and exciting, and honestly I think we need more whimsy of, right? Like, we just need those types of things more. But then, to your point, right, with game developers and how hard are you going to be working on this one thing that nobody might ever see, right? Coupled with unfortunate rampant layoffs in the industry and all that too. It's tough. It's tough to balance those sort of fun things because the game industry isn't taking care of their beloved, of the people who love the game industry.
Right.
So.
Most developers I've spoken to have had that sense of joy of being able to do these things regardless of if it's going to the metrics show it hitting for every player, and it's like you're to that point of shareholders, investors, return on investment, all that jazz. But I think this points out to me of like this game means so much to us and especially to you. I'm kind of curious. Do you revisit? I know you're still very an avid fan of the Pokemon franchise as a whole, but this game in particular. When was the last time you've you know found your cartridge or revisited the game? I know it's been remastered and stuff.
Oh gosh, no. I mean, the shelf life on those batteries were what, 10 years inside of a Game Boy. No, they're they're actually on display, like in some of my displays in my office right now, and really they're keepsakes right now, right? Okay. And it's more so that I don't want to revisit nostalgia sometimes, just in case I ruin it for myself.
Okay. Well, in that point, then, has your feelings of the game changed over the years?
I think it's more so that there was very much a long stretch of time where I felt like we were not doing anything with the Pokemon franchise that was helping it outside of its brand to reach a bigger audience. I'm a huge fan of the trading card game, right? I don't buy the trading card game myself, but I do play Pokemon TCG Pocket. When the Game Boy game came out for the Pokemon TCG as well, I played that into the ground. I loved it, right? When Pokemon Rescue Team came out, it was something new and fresh, but it kind of just missed me because I just looked up the date. I was starting college at the time, right? And unfortunately, there is always a time where your love of the things that you love take a dip. Right? That was my dip, right? Okay. And then something that so I absolutely missed that. I just played the demo for the 2020 remaster last month.
Oh. Okay.
And I was like, I can't believe I missed something so fun, right? It took me like 15, 20 years to get back to something that I think would have really revitalized my love for the franchise itself. And then a few years ago, we got Pokemon Arceus.
Yeah.
Which was in my opinion was probably the best breath of fresh air for Pokemon in general. And we're lucky enough to get another one this year.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about that very soon.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that, like, knowing both you and Alex, Pokemon is something you both have a shared enjoyment of. I know she has her own enjoyment of it in her own way. Is that something that, like, you two had bonded over throughout your relationship, or is that something that developed because you were such an enthusiast? Like, can you tell me a little bit about that relationship you guys share?
I think when Alex and I approach like any games or any media that we love, it inevitably happens to where she loves something that I very much don't enjoy as an aspect of it, and then I love something that she very much does not enjoy. And so our opposites show each other like how why we love the things that we love. And a great example of this is Pokemon TCG Pocket. We were at one of our favorite wine bars. The minute I could download it, the very first day that TCG Pocket opened up, I downloaded it, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, well, it's a game that it's a card game that I used to love playing as a kid. I just wanted to see how it was, right?" And we went through it and everything too. The battling, right? I love the battling, right? It's streamlined battling. You don't have to spend money on it as well if you don't want to. I'm proud to say that I have spent $0 on this game, but the amount of time that I've spent on this game has cost me so much. But Alex downloaded the game a few weeks later, after weeks of seeing me play. And something that she loved was the collecting aspect of it, right? It wasn't battling that she loved. It was, what are the nice full artworks I can get? Or can I complete the Pokedex of these cards? Or something like that, right? And that's something I very much don't enjoy. I just need 2 copies of the cards that I need to battle with, and that's it. I could care less about the other cards that I'm not using. but then she shows me, okay, well, like with all of these completed Pokedexes, like this is what's keeping her going.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really cool. I feel like, yeah, you finding your own ways in which you are enjoying the same thing, but in the way that it speaks to each of you, and sharing that is so important, and so something like we always need to remind ourselves about. Of this is like, we all enjoy these different things. I'm enjoying Pokemon in my own way, but the fact that we can relate to it and talk about all these memories you and I share then furthers that social engagement of it and everything. Do you think in today's world, they revisit these games so often and remaster them and bring new ones out and everything? If you were to talk to someone today who's never experienced Pokemon in their life before, and you had the opportunity to give them a first Pokemon, would you give them Red and Blue, or would you find a later entry to introduce them to?
With the advent of having about 20 years in order to work on the improvements of these games, I think that there is value in showing them the originals, but I also think that there's value in playing a newer version, depending on where you are in your life.
Sure.
Scarlet and Violet did have a lot of issues when it came to fans' reactions to it, but the game before that was Sword and Shield.
Right.
Sword and Shield, for me, I think this was actually one of the first games where you could not turn off experience share. And what experience share in the game is that, every time one Pokemon gains experience, all of the Pokemon in your party gain experience. And as somebody who considered themselves a hardcore player at one point, I always turned it off because I wanted to make sure that I'm training each and every one of them. Mm-hmm. Now, at the time of Sword and Shield, it was this very unique time where not only could I not turn it off, but I had a lot more adult responsibilities. But I still had the burning need to want to play this game. And the way that they have streamlined it for people who are working professionals, or who can only pick this up for an hour at a time, where they make the game, and I hesitate to use the word easier for you, but more accessible for you. Right, and to make sure that you, as the person in whatever life point you're at, can still enjoy it just as much. So I would say maybe Sword and Shield. Oh gosh, is it Black and White? Is that the first one where you could buy clothing for your avatar?
It was either Black and White, or I think Pearl and Diamond.
No, so Pearl. I don't think it was Pearl and Diamond, because I actually didn't play Pearl and Diamond during release. I actually played the updated versions.
Okay.
But whatever game it was where you could buy clothing, I was not playing to be competitive at Pokemon. I was playing to earn money in the game in order to have a full fashion line, and I think that was a big turning point for me. And then after that, it kind of middled out into, okay, cool, I can buy clothing for myself and I can battle Pokemon.
Yeah. No, it's something interesting is also like, that ebb and flow of our passion with a certain game or games or series. I know for me, Red and Blue is one of also like the strongest points of memories I have, but I saw that for a brief moment. I think we've joked about this before, when Pokemon Go came out on the phone. It's similar to TCG in some ways, but I think in a larger, wider spread. It was probably the closest we've seen like any kind of world peace in a way, and seeing a fervent kind of like all those same things we've talked about today, of the communal aspects, the social engagement, catching certain things that only I have access to, or you. I had friends that would go on travel, or I would go on travel, and we'd always be like, okay, you can do these things, or even the elements that you're talking about of like, oh, if you do this and this, you may be able to do some elements. And seeing that, I wonder, just to get to a question is, if you were to create, like, if Game Freak and Pokemon came to you, JPG, and said, the next entry in any sort of fashion for Pokemon's series is in your hands decision-wise, what is your envisionment for that?
Oh, I have two answers. One
Okay.
of them is a little bit of a joke answer. Um, the first one is I do want to go back. Okay, so Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
I truly believe the first month of Pokemon Go is the closest we will ever get to nuclear disarmament, right? Like I think the level of people taking it both seriously and wholesomely is something we will never see again in our lives until we get full until we get like full Sword Art Online VR, right? We get full Ready Player One VR, right? We're never ever going to see that buy-in to the wholesomeness ever again until we get that. For me, I would like to see Pokemon focus on everyday life.
Okay.
As I get older, I realize that having a team of 6 Pokemon plus a whole bunch that just like live on a ranch randomly that you can switch out whenever you want. No, that's unreasonable. You have to feed these things and show it love and all that stuff. Imagine having 60 dogs. Like, right? Like it's a dream, but it's too much, right? And you know, they make the point in the game as well too that like when you meet other people, right? A hiker is going to be using Pokemon that they use while hiking. A swimmer is going to be using Pokemon that help them swim as well, right? Beauties help with like, because there was like a beauty contest aspect as well too. And really the only types of trainers that really kind of meet up to your specs as a player trainer are the aces, right? Because they're the ones who are like semi-professional or professional trainers.
Right.
What I would love to see are cozier, more focused games.
Okay.
Where, okay, well, yeah, you're not a Pokemon trainer. You're just like a person trying to like live their life, right? Rescue Team had it to where you're a Pokemon, you have a buddy Pokemon, and you guys are saving Pokemon, right? Okay, well, what about like, okay, you have a game where you're a first responder and you pick Pokemon that help you help you answer calls to natural disasters,
right?
Or things like that, right? Or like, hey, like what Pokemon would help you on your commute to your salaryman job or something, right?
Okay.
I'd like to see those a little bit more because,
That'd be
and
really
especially
cool.
with the push to cozy games as well too. A lot of people, I mean, like essentially, you know, Pokemon has a lot of there are a lot of animal fighting aspects to it that might make people uncomfortable.
That's fair.
Let's have some wholesome ones in there, you know.
Yeah.
Let's have some wholesomes.
I think that'd be cool. And again, to call back to Alex's episode, she was talking about her love of Animal Crossing. And I think a lot of what you're talking about too kind of hits on some of those elements, but in the way Pokemon could do that speak to Pokemon's like world building and audience and stuff. So,
and I think we're seeing that a lot in their short animations. You also have that incredible stop motion animation, Pokemon Concierge.
Yeah, I remember you guys talking about.
If I played a full game of Pokemon Concierge, oh my gosh,
that'd be okay. We'll get in touch with them about that.
All right.
But one of the last questions I want to ask you is: we talk about typing, we talk about different types of trainers. If you were in the Pokemon world, what would your gym be, and what typing would you go with? That speaks to who you are.
I've thought about this a lot, and I would be one of two trainers. I would either be an electric trainer.
Okay.
Oh no, I'd be one of 3 trainers. Sorry, I'd either be an electric trainer, a fighting trainer, or a steel trainer.
Okay, I want to hear the reasoning for you.
Okay. Electric trainers, just because electric Pokemon were kind of just my favorite first and foremost. Getting a Jolteon was a revelation for me, and I still think a Jolteon is my favorite Pokemon at this point. Okay. Out of like over almost 1,000 of them at this point, right? Yeah. Fighting trainers, I love combat sports. I love the concepts of combat as well too, and I just think it's hilarious that there's just these type of Pokemon. They're like, no magic powers. I'm just throwing hands, right? And then steel trainers. I love the defense aspect of it because at the end of the day, you are always going to get hit, right?
Mhm.
There are very few ways to win Pokemon without fainting another Pokemon, and in order to do that, you need to set certain things up. Most of the times, it is attacks.
Yeah.
If you're always going to be getting hit, it's great to like, I fully believe a good offense is the best defense. And yeah, and just Steel also has a lot of weaknesses.
Mhm.
So you're also like starting like a foot behind, and I like that. I like starting where it's like, okay, well, you're a little bit tougher, but then you have more weaknesses. So you could just have a kid with a Charmander come in here and wreck shop, right? But no, I'm going to show him what's up.
Yeah, the fact that you then still defeat them is like an extra accolade. I feel like to go back to your Bulbasaur picking. So another element of it was like it was always the hardest to those earlier gyms and combats. Bulbasaur was the hardest one to navigate some of those things, just because of the typing of some of the gyms.
Yeah. So how it actually pans out was that the first two gyms, or the first 2 to 3 gyms, were easiest for you, and then everything else had some sort of damage against you at this point.
Yeah, my bad.
And I think that they actually like scientifically proved that Bulbasaur is the worst choice out of the 3 because of typing issues. Yeah, so I like the idea of starting behind and then making that comeback.
Yeah, that's awesome. JPG, I wanted to ask: do you have any closing thoughts about your the franchise in Red and Blue and what it means to you?
I do have one thought right now.
Please.
There was recently a leak that Red and Blue might be getting remastered for the Switch or Switch 2.
Yeah.
That is something that I'm very excited for. Having a game that you love with quality of life changes coming into it is always really, really exciting. And if the leak is true, I think I'm going to be the first person in line for it. And and it just makes me miss midnight releases.
Yeah, those elements of the past ways in which we went about some of these gaming launches and stuff. It is a celebration, and there's a fun to that.
The community aspect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think some of the things that I valued a lot of from hearing your experiences and what your stories and of tied to this game and in these 2 games is like the love that like your mother had put in and the hard work of getting you invested and to be able to have the ability to enjoy this whole world and to commiserate in it and to have these opportunities, the dynamics you had in your social spaces growing up, and then even years later now with your wife and with friends like you and I, like it's just and so many of the elements that still speak to who you are today, I think is just so like evident to me. And I think that's really something special to see there.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to say too, also, of season 1 of my show doesn't have too much of a specific theming in terms of the general topics or anything. It's very much like I want to get the guests who and what they're passionate about, what means a lot to them. But to me, it was very much a personal theming that I took with season 1. I wanted to have the people on, and it was the guests and who they've been in my life, in the creative journey and in the process, in the past, present, and future. And you very much have been a part of all aspects of that. And it means a lot to me, of like the guidance you've given me, the guidance, the friendship we've had and continue to have, and where we continue to go. So this is a bit of a thank you and appreciation from my side to you as well.
Oh, thank you so much.
Is there any, but before we go, I want to give you a chance to speak to our viewers, let them know where they can find you and anything you'd like to plug. I will say the episode will be launching sometime in March and April around that.
Okay.
So if that helps.
Okay. So once again, I have been JPG. I'm a pop culture educator and consultant. I am a featured speaker for conventions like San Diego Comic-Con, Gen Con Indianapolis as well. I run the pop culture consultancy firm Intermyth. which is a consultancy firm that either helps marginalized communities launch into the pop culture space, or if any marginalized communities are experiencing any hurdles or plateaus, I help get them over those as well too. You can check out my the services I offer at intermyth.org, and you can find me on all social media at Speaker JPG.
And we'll make sure to put in the show notes, all of those things that you just mentioned, where to find you, make it as easy as possible. I highly encourage you guys to check out everything JPG has worked on and continues to work on. And thank you, JPG, again for being on the show today, being on season 1. Thank you, the viewer, for listening and watching episode. And we'll see you on the next Save Point.